My name is Evelyn Carson, and I'm 59 years old. It feels strange to admit that my life has shifted so dramatically in the last few months. For the longest time, I was the one who held everything together. The mother who kept track of every detail, the wife who always put her family first. It was a role I was proud of, and truthfully, it defined me. I'd been the heart of our family, the one who did the planning, the organizing, and the nurturing. I didn't mind it. In fact, I thrived in it. Michael and I built a life together, and I took care of the rest. Raising our children, Sarah and Lucas, was the most important job I'd ever had. Even now, when I look back, I can't help but feel that I did it all the right way. I gave my heart and soul to them, to Michael, and to our family. But lately, I've started to wonder if I ever really knew what my family thought of me, or if I'd been playing a role all along. It began with Sarah. She's 30 now, a successful young woman with a law degree, a promising career, and a fiancé she was proud of. Sarah and I always had a good relationship, until recently. I never expected her to turn on me the way she did. The first sign of trouble came when she called me, just a few months ago, to tell me about the wedding she was planning. It was one of those moments when I could feel the excitement in her voice, the way she always used to get when she was planning something big. I was happy for her. Of course I was. She was my daughter, and I was overjoyed that she'd found someone to spend her life with. I just wanted to be part of that joy. But then the conversation turned. "Mom, I need to talk to you about the wedding," she said, her tone a little more serious than I expected. "Luke and I have been looking at venues, and we've worked out the guest list. We'll need about $40,000 from you. For the wedding, of course." I thought I must have heard her wrong. $40,000? My mind raced. 40,000? Sarah, what for? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She was quiet for a moment, and then she explained. The wedding would be in the Bahamas, and they'd need that amount for everything. Destination travel for the guests, elaborate decorations, catering, and a venue that could accommodate their friends and family. "We want a wedding we can be proud of, Mom," she said. "I mean, it's not just for us. It's for the whole family. And don't you want me to have a beautiful wedding?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I offered to help, of course, but $40,000? It felt excessive, irresponsible even. I didn't have that kind of money lying around. The savings I had, my husband Michael's life insurance money, was meant for my retirement. It was the cushion I'd carefully built up over the years, the one that would allow me to live comfortably in my later years without worrying about every little expense. I wasn't willing to risk that for a wedding, especially one that felt more like a show than a celebration of love. I told Sarah I couldn't afford that amount, but I offered $10,000. It was still a lot, but it was reasonable. "I can't give you $40,000, sweetheart, but I can help with $10,000, and that should cover a lovely local wedding. You can still have something beautiful without going into debt over it," I said, my voice calm, trying to reason with her. Her response hit me like a slap. "Mom, that's not enough," she said, her tone now sharp and angry. "You have the money, and you're just being selfish. We're trying to start our life, and you're holding on to all this for yourself. Don't you want me to be happy?" I was stunned. Sarah, my girl who used to call me when she had a bad day at school, who used to ask for help with her homework, was now speaking to me with contempt. She saw me not as a mother who had supported her through the years, but as someone who was blocking her happiness. It was as though the daughter I'd spent my whole life nurturing had disappeared, replaced by someone who saw me as nothing more than an ATM. "I'm not being selfish," I tried to explain, my voice trembling. "Happiness isn't about extravagant weddings. It's about the love you share, the life you build together. I just want to make sure you're not going into debt over a day that will pass in the blink of an eye. I want to help, but I can't give you everything you're asking for." But it was no use. She slammed the phone down, and I was left in silence, wondering what had gone wrong. Days passed, and the distance between Sarah and me grew. The texts stopped, the phone calls became fewer. The gap between us grew wider with each passing day. I spent hours wondering how things had changed so quickly. Was it Luke's influence? Was it the culture around them? The desire for luxury and status? The more I thought about it, the more I realized it didn't matter. My daughter had changed, and I didn't know how to get through to her anymore. Then, 3 weeks later, I received an unexpected call from her. It came one Tuesday morning, just after I'd finished pulling the weeds from my garden, a small garden I had started when I downsized to this little house after Michael's passing. I had found peace in it, a new way of caring for something. Sarah's voice on the phone was different, softer, vulnerable. "Mom," she said, her tone no longer sharp. "I've been thinking about everything. Maybe we've both been too stubborn. Could we talk? I'd really like to work things out. How about dinner tonight?" My heart lifted, even though I was hesitant. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, and this sudden change of heart was unexpected. Perhaps it was the pregnancy, or maybe it was just time and reflection. Maybe becoming a mother herself had given her the ability to understand the sacrifices I had made for her. It seemed like a hopeful sign, a chance to bridge the gap that had formed between us. So I agreed. That evening, I got ready for the dinner with Sarah. As I applied my makeup and slipped into my best dress, I allowed myself a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could move past this. Maybe she had realized that family meant more than just the grand celebrations. Maybe this dinner would be the start of healing. I drove to Matteo's, the Italian restaurant where Michael and I had spent many quiet dinners, and I began to think about all the memories tied to the place, the simple, comfortable moments we shared before life got too busy. As I pulled into the parking lot, I felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. Would this dinner be the turning point we needed? Or was it simply another step toward losing my daughter forever? I checked the time. It was 6:30, right on the dot. I was proud of Sarah for being punctual. It was one of the traits she'd picked up from me. When I walked into Matteo's, I was greeted by a hostess who led me to a table where Sarah was already seated. She looked beautiful, glowing in a way that only a pregnant woman can, but there was something about her that made me uneasy. She was wearing a dress I didn't recognize, something expensive, something that made me wonder if she had been planning this dinner all along. We exchanged pleasantries, and I asked her how she was feeling. But just as we were settling in, the door opened, and there was Luke with two men in dark suits, briefcases in hand. I froze. My gut twisted with realization. The dinner I thought would be a peaceful reconciliation was in fact another financial maneuver, one that I hadn't seen coming. As Luke walked in, flanked by two men in dark suits, the air around me seemed to tighten. My heart sank as I watched them approach the table. This wasn't a dinner to heal old wounds. It wasn't about reconciliation or finding common ground. It was a carefully orchestrated business transaction, dressed up as a family dinner. I could see it now. The way the men carried themselves, the silent coordination between them and Luke. I felt the knot in my stomach tighten as the reality of the situation set in. "Mom, thank you for coming," Luke said, his smile too wide, too rehearsed. His voice carried that air of confident charm, but I could see the strain behind his eyes. It wasn't the warm greeting I had been hoping for. Instead, it felt like I had walked into some sort of trap. I didn't know whether to be angry or to laugh at the absurdity of it all. The men took their seats around the table, and the intimacy of the dinner I had imagined shattered. The dinner, meant to be a simple conversation between mother and daughter, had turned into a business meeting, a transaction in disguise. I sat there, stunned, unsure of how to react. I looked at Sarah, who had been so eager just hours before to meet and talk things through, but now she sat there, silent, her eyes focused on the table, not meeting my gaze. Luke sat down next to Sarah and cleared his throat before speaking again. "These gentlemen," he said, motioning toward the men in suits, "are some of my colleagues. They've prepared some documents for you to look over." He smiled again, but it felt empty, like a mask he was trying too hard to wear. I tried to swallow my confusion. "Documents?" I asked, my voice shaking despite myself. I couldn't comprehend what was happening. The plan for a peaceful dinner was quickly unraveling in front of me. What did they want with me? What was all this really about? Luke nodded, as if he expected this question. "It's really quite simple, Mrs. Carson," he said, his voice smooth and calculated. "We're asking you to sign a power of attorney so we can help you manage your finances. Given your age and the fact that you're living alone now, It just makes sense to have someone younger handling your investments, your property decisions. I blinked, unsure whether I had heard him right. I looked at Sarah again, my heart sinking as I saw the cold detachment in her eyes. This wasn't a plea for understanding or a heart-to-heart talk. This was an attempt to control everything I had worked for, all the things Michael and I had built together. My home, my savings, my life insurance, everything. It was all slipping through my fingers in that moment. I tried to hold my composure, but my hands were trembling as I gripped the edge of the table. "I'm sorry. I'm not following," I said, my voice steady but strained. "You want me to sign a document that gives you control of my assets, my home, my accounts, my life?" Luke's smile faltered for a moment, just a slight crack, but I saw it, the mask slipping. "That's right," he said, his tone patronizing. "We just want to help you make sure you're well taken care of. You don't have to worry about any of this. It's really for your own good. Trust me, Evelyn. You've worked hard for your money. Let someone else handle the stress of managing it." I could hardly believe my ears. I'd worked my whole life to build something secure, something that would ensure my peace of mind in my later years. And now, here was my daughter and her fiancé, acting like they were entitled to it all, trying to push me into signing everything away under the guise of concern. The audacity of it left me speechless for a moment, and I felt the weight of years of sacrifice crash over me. All those late nights, the times I worked overtime to ensure we could live comfortably, and now it seemed like all of that was worthless to them. "Sarah, is this what you want?" I asked, my voice softer now, my eyes fixed on my daughter. She was sitting there, her hands folded neatly in her lap, not looking up, not speaking. This wasn't the girl I had raised. This wasn't the daughter who had once looked up to me, the one who trusted my judgment. Where was that girl now? She finally looked up at me, her expression unreadable. "This is the way things need to be, Mom," she said, her voice lacking the warmth it once held. "Luke and I are starting our life together. You have all this money sitting there. You don't need it. We need it more than you do." The words cut through me like a knife. You don't need it. What did that even mean? Did she truly believe that? Did she think her father's life insurance, the funds we had carefully saved, was just some pot of money to be dipped into at will? That I was some kind of financial resource, there to be used and discarded when no longer needed? The anger I had felt earlier began to bubble up again, but I held it in check. This wasn't the time to lose my temper. Not yet. One of the men in suits, a silver-haired lawyer with sharp eyes and a too-wide grin, leaned forward and placed a manila folder on the table in front of me. "Mrs. Carson," he said, his voice smooth as silk, "if you could just sign here, here, and initial here, we can get everything squared away tonight. It's really for the best, for everyone." I stared at the folder, the words "Power of Attorney" printed in bold at the top. I felt a cold wave of realization wash over me. This was no accident. This wasn't some small request for help. This was a plan, a scheme to take control of everything I had spent decades building. I looked at Sarah once more, searching her face for any trace of the woman I had once known, but all I saw was someone I didn't recognize. A stranger. And in that moment, I realized something deep inside me. I couldn't sign this. I couldn't let them take everything from me. "I'm not signing anything," I said, my voice more firm now, my resolve hardening. "Not now, not ever." Luke's face faltered, his smile twitching in disbelief. "What do you mean?" he asked, his tone sharp now. "You don't understand. This is for your own good, for the family." "No, it's not," I said, my voice cold now, harder than I'd ever heard it before. "This is for you, for your future, at my expense." I looked at the folder one last time, then reached for my phone. My hands were steady now, my mind clear. I dialed Lucas. I didn't know how he would react to all of this, but I needed him. I needed his strength. I needed him to help me hold my ground. "Lucas," I said when he picked up, "I need you to come to Mateo's right now. I don't care what you're doing. Just get here. It's urgent." And as I waited for him to arrive, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The tide was turning. When Lucas arrived, I couldn't help but feel a rush of relief. His presence brought a kind of stability that had been sorely missing from this whole nightmare. The tension in the room seemed to shift the moment he walked in. There was something about his calm, collected demeanor that cut through the chaos and gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt since Sarah's call 3 weeks ago. He was my son, but in that moment, it felt like I was the one who needed his protection. "Mom, what's going on?" he asked quietly, scanning the table as he sat down beside me. He gave me a look that I could only describe as protective, like a shield had suddenly formed between me and the others. I could see in his eyes that he had already assessed the situation, and without needing any further explanation, he turned his focus to Luke and the lawyers. "Explain this to me," Lucas said calmly, his voice carrying the authority of someone who wasn't afraid of confrontation. "What's all this about a power of attorney?" Luke shifted uncomfortably in his seat, the charming, confident persona he had been projecting slipping just a little. I could see the cracks forming, and it gave me an odd sense of satisfaction. He cleared his throat, his smile faltering as he tried to regain control of the situation. "Lucas, this is about your mother's finances," he said, trying to sound reasonable. "We've come to a mutual decision to help her manage her affairs. It's really in her best interest. We're just asking for a bit of help, someone younger to take care of things." I couldn't stop myself from letting out a small, bitter laugh. "Younger? Is that what this is? You want to control everything I've worked for because you think I'm too old to manage my own finances?" Luke hesitated, clearly taken aback by my response, and the tension at the table grew thicker. I could feel the air closing in on us, each of us holding our breath as the moment stretched out. Sarah sat still, not saying a word, her hands tightly clasped in her lap, her eyes darting between Lucas and me, but never meeting my gaze. She looked like she was somewhere else entirely, physically present, but emotionally distant. The woman I had known, the one who came to me for advice, the daughter I had always supported, seemed to have disappeared. In her place sat someone I didn't recognize, someone driven by something I couldn't even begin to understand. Lucas leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he addressed Luke directly. "You don't need to do this. This is not about my mother needing help. It's about you and Sarah wanting control. And don't think for a second I don't see through it. I may be a doctor, but I'm not blind." He paused, his voice turning more serious, sharper. "I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but you're not going to get away with it. Not with her." The sharpness in Lucas's tone was like a wake-up call to the entire room. Luke's smile disappeared entirely now, replaced by a look of frustration and defensiveness. His attempts to keep up the charade faltered. "Look, Lucas, we're just trying to make sure everything's in order. Your mom's getting older, and I'm not getting older." I cut him off, my voice firm and steady now. "I'm living my life the way I want to, and I don't need you to come in here and take control of everything I've worked for just because you think I'm incapable." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from something else, resolve, something I hadn't realized I still had until this very moment. I hadn't been afraid of Luke or Sarah or their schemes. I was angry. I was angry at how they had underestimated me. And I was angry at how Sarah had allowed this to happen. How she had let her fiancé manipulate not just me, but her entire family. Luke opened his mouth to respond, but Lucas didn't let him. "I don't know what you thought this would accomplish, Luke," he said, shaking his head slowly. "But whatever it is, it's not going to happen. You're not going to walk into this room with all your lawyers and your fancy papers and think you can push my mother around." His voice was calm, but there was an undeniable strength in it. "You can't scare us. You're out of your league." At that moment, the shift was undeniable. Luke's entire posture changed. His confident front was completely gone now, and I could see the fear creeping into his eyes, just the slightest twitch of his shoulders, the nervous glance he shot at his colleagues. This wasn't how he had planned it. He had thought he could walk into this dinner and just pull the wool over our eyes, but instead, he had walked into a situation where he was the one who was outmatched. The silver-haired lawyer, the one who had been so sure of himself earlier, cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable now. "Perhaps we've been a bit too hasty," he said, shifting in his seat. Maybe we should all just stop playing games," I said sharply, cutting him off. "This is my life. You don't get to come in here and decide what's best for me. I didn't ask for your help, and I certainly don't need your lawyers taking over my finances. If I need assistance, I'll ask for it, but this is not the way to do it. I sat back in my chair, feeling a strange sense of clarity and empowerment. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I didn't feel like I was losing. I wasn't going to let this happen. I had worked too hard to build my life, to build the life Michael and I had planned together, and I wasn't going to let anyone tear it down for their own gain. Luke's expression darkened, but I wasn't intimidated anymore. "You don't understand, Evelyn," he said, his voice low. "We're doing this because it's necessary. Your future, your finances." "Don't talk to me about my future," I interrupted. "You want to talk about necessity? It's necessary for me to live my life without people like you trying to take everything from me. And it's necessary for you to realize that this ends now." As I looked around the table at the uncomfortable silence that had settled in the room, I realized something. The only reason this whole thing had gone as far as it had was because I had allowed it. I had allowed them to think they could walk in and dictate terms, but not anymore. Not today. "I'm not signing anything," I said, my voice clear and final. "And if you think you can force me, you're sorely mistaken." There was a long, heavy pause before Lucas spoke again, his voice quieter now. "We don't need to do this. This doesn't have to go any further. But if you keep pushing, I'll make sure it does." Luke's facade cracked. For the first time, I saw something resembling fear in his eyes. The silence that followed spoke volumes. The silence in the room was deafening. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating, as if every second stretched on forever. The weight of the conversation had shifted, and Luke, once so confident and manipulative, now seemed to be grasping at whatever control he thought he had. His lawyers exchanged uncomfortable glances, and I could see the unease creeping into their polished, practiced expressions. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't expected me to stand up for myself, to push back so forcefully. For the first time in a long time, I felt something in me settle. It wasn't fear or anger. It was a calm clarity, an understanding that I had the power to choose my own fate, no matter what anyone else thought or wanted. My heart was no longer racing in panic. It was steady, focused. And as I sat there across from my daughter and her fiancé, I realized that for so long, I had been bending myself to the will of others. I had done it for Michael, for Sarah, for Lucas. I had made sacrifices, taken on burdens, and allowed people to make decisions about my life because I thought that was what was expected of me. But no more. I wasn't going to let this happen. Not today. Not ever again. "Mom, can we just please talk about this?" Sarah's voice broke through the silence, and I turned my gaze to her. She was sitting there, still in her designer dress, still so poised. But the look on her face wasn't the same one I had seen so many times in the past. There was no warmth, no openness, no daughter who once came to me for advice and comfort. There was just the woman she had become, the one who was willing to trade her mother's dignity for the sake of convenience, for the sake of her wedding, for the sake of what Luke wanted. "Talk about what, Sarah?" I asked, keeping my tone even, but there was a quiet edge to it. "Talk about how you think you can walk into my life and demand everything I've worked for. Talk about how you let Luke use you to manipulate me." She flinched at my words, and I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt, but it was quickly washed away by the deeper, stronger feeling of betrayal. This wasn't just about a wedding. This wasn't about a mother who was being asked to contribute to a special day. This was about something far more significant: my autonomy, my right to choose how I wanted to live my life. And Sarah, my daughter, had chosen to walk away from that. She had chosen to ignore me, to treat me as an obstacle instead of a mother. I looked at Luke, who was now leaning back in his chair, arms crossed defensively, his earlier charm gone completely. His attempt to keep up his confident, suave exterior was falling apart. His posture was stiff, his face pale, and I could see the flicker of panic in his eyes as he realized that things were quickly spiraling out of his control. This was no longer the dinner he had imagined. This wasn't a strategic conversation to secure my finances. It was a desperate attempt to take from me everything that wasn't his to claim. "You've made your point, Evelyn," one of the lawyers said, his voice shaking slightly. "But this doesn't have to get ugly. We can still work this out if you're willing to reconsider." I could feel my pulse quicken, not out of fear, but out of the righteousness of my decision. Ugly? I repeated. You think this is about ugly? What you're trying to do is about something much worse than ugly. It's about control. It's about manipulation, and I won't stand for it. I turned to Sarah. You don't get to manipulate me, sweetheart. You don't get to use my love for you as a way to take everything I have. For the first time since this dinner began, Sarah's eyes softened just for a second. But that softness was quickly replaced with a sharp, defensive edge. You don't understand, Mom, she said, her voice quieter now, almost pleading. We just need help. We're trying to build a future, and we need you to support us, not stand in our way. I could see it in her eyes now. The desperation, the sense of entitlement that had taken root in her. This wasn't about need. This wasn't about starting a future. This was about greed, about wanting more without regard for the sacrifices I had made for my own future. I sighed, a long exhale, as if trying to release all the frustration that had been building in me for weeks, months even. You don't need me to sign over everything I have to help you, Sarah. You don't need me to hand over control of my life to start your life. Luke opened his mouth, probably to interrupt, but I didn't give him the chance. I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor, the sound sharp in the otherwise quiet room. I walked around the table and stood next to Sarah, leaning in just enough to make sure she could hear me. I've spent my entire life putting everyone else first. Your father, Lucas, you. I've always been there for you, no matter what. I thought that was enough, but now I see that you don't respect me. You don't respect what I've built. You think you can just waltz in and take it all because you think it's yours. I looked at her, my heart breaking, but I was past the point of caring about the tears that might come. I'm not giving it to you. Not like this. Not for a wedding, not for a dream that you think you deserve. I've worked too hard for it all, Sarah, and I won't let you or Luke take it from me. Not like this. For a long moment, there was silence. Even Luke seemed to realize that this wasn't going the way he'd planned. His earlier charm was gone, replaced by something darker, a mix of frustration and desperation. I turned to Lucas, who had been silent for most of the conversation, but had been watching everything unfold with a quiet intensity. He caught my eye, and I could see the pride in his gaze. He didn't need to say anything. He was with me, fully, no questions asked. I've made my decision, I said, my voice steady, my hands now calm at my sides. And you can't change it. It felt like the world paused for a moment, the weight of my decision settling in. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. The moment when I stopped allowing others to decide my future. Sarah, I said, my voice softer now, though there was no mistaking the finality in it. If you ever want to have a real conversation, if you ever want to build a relationship on respect and love, you know where to find me. But not like this. With that, I picked up my purse, feeling the weight of the years of love, betrayal, and heartache in my hands. I didn't know what the future held, but I did know this. I was free. As I walked out of the restaurant with Lucas, my heart felt lighter than it had in weeks, maybe even months. The night air was cooler than I had expected, but it didn't matter. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't weighed down by guilt or confusion. I had made my choice, and I was no longer going to let anyone push me around, least of all my own daughter and her fiancé. I could feel the steady rhythm of my footsteps as I walked down the sidewalk, the familiar hum of the city surrounding me, but all I could focus on was the quiet strength that had settled in my chest, the power of knowing that I had done the right thing, the hard thing. When we got into the car, Lucas turned to me, his eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Pride, maybe, or relief. Mom? I don't know how you did it, he said quietly, breaking the silence that had settled between us during the walk. But I'm glad you did. I glanced at him, feeling a lump form in my throat. He was my son, my rock, the one person in this whole mess who had never doubted me. It wasn't easy, I admitted, my voice a little thicker than usual, but I couldn't let them control me anymore, Lucas. Not like that. Lucas didn't say anything more, just nodded and kept his eyes on the road. I didn't need him to say anything. He understood. It had been so long since I had felt truly empowered, not just as his mother, but as a woman who could stand up for herself. The burden of always trying to please everyone was heavy, but I had been carrying it for so long, I hadn't realized how much it was affecting me. Tonight, I had taken a stand, and I could feel it in every fiber of my being. I wasn't just protecting my finances, I was protecting myself, my dignity, my peace. We didn't talk much on the drive home. I could feel the weight of the conversation with Sarah still hanging over me. It was like we had crossed some line, one that couldn't be undone. Part of me wanted to believe that I could get back the daughter I had raised, the one who came to me for advice, the one who trusted me. But that girl felt like a distant memory now. What sat across from me at the table tonight wasn't the little girl who used to bring me flowers or ask me to help with her homework. It was someone else, someone who had been consumed by entitlement and greed. Someone who had chosen her fiancé over me. I had always tried to be a good mother. I had always tried to do what was best for my children, even when it was difficult. But tonight, I had realized something that hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't protect them from everything. I had tried so hard to be the perfect mother, the one who kept everything together, who sacrificed her own wants and needs for them. But somewhere along the way, I had forgotten that I mattered too. When I walked into my house, I was struck by how quiet it felt. The house that Michael and I had shared. The house where we had raised Sarah and Lucas. The house that had been filled with laughter, with love, with memories. Now it felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something. Maybe it was waiting for me to finally breathe again. I walked into the kitchen, the familiar creak of the floorboards beneath my feet, the only sound filling the space. The soft glow of the kitchen lights illuminated the countertops where I had spent countless hours cooking, cleaning, preparing meals for my family. It was my sanctuary. And tonight, it felt like my personal triumph. I made myself a cup of tea, trying to calm my racing thoughts. As I sat down at the kitchen table, I stared at the steaming cup in front of me, letting the warmth fill me, grounding me in the present moment. It wasn't just about the power of attorney. It wasn't just about the money. It was about respect. It was about reclaiming my voice and my power, and not letting anyone take that from me. My phone buzzed on the table, snapping me out of my thoughts. I picked it up and saw that it was a message from Sarah. My stomach dropped as I hesitated for a moment before opening it. I hadn't been sure if I was ready to hear from her again, but the message was short, simple, and to the point. We need to talk. Please. I'm sorry. Can we meet? I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, unsure of how to respond. I could feel the conflict in my chest, the desire to reconnect, to heal the wound between us, but also the realization that I couldn't let her manipulate me again. I couldn't let her think that a simple apology would erase the betrayal, the way she had tried to take from me, the way she had treated me as if I were just a means to an end. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat there, letting the words sink in, letting the weight of what had just happened between us settle. I had made my boundaries clear. I wasn't going to let her cross them again. But part of me still longed for that connection, longed for the daughter I had lost somewhere along the way. The truth was, I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if Sarah would ever understand or if she would continue down the path she was on. I didn't know if I could trust her again. But what I did know was this: I was stronger now. I had control of my life, my decisions, and my future, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. Not Sarah, not Luke, not anyone. After a few minutes, I typed a response. I'm not sure what you want to talk about, but I'm open to listening. On my terms, though. If you're ready to truly understand what happened, then we can meet, but I need you to respect my boundaries. I pressed send and set my phone down on the table. I didn't know what would come next, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. Whatever happened, I was going to be okay. I had learned that much tonight. The future was unwritten, but it was mine to create, and for the first time, that thought filled me with something I hadn't felt in years: hope. The days that followed felt strange, almost surreal, like the air around me had shifted into something new. The decision I had made at Mateo's continued to echo in my mind, but the shock of it had worn off. I was left with a strange sense of calm, a quiet certainty that I hadn't had in years. It was as if I had reclaimed something I didn't even realize I had lost. Myself. The version of me that had spent so long putting everyone else's needs first, that had hidden behind the roles of wife, mother, and caretaker, was finally starting to stand on her own 2 feet. I didn't know what the future held, or whether Sarah and I would ever be able to repair what had been broken, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done living on anyone else's terms. The way I had been treated, by Sarah, by Luke, and even by myself, was no longer acceptable. And somehow, that knowledge was empowering. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again, unburdened by guilt or fear. After that dinner, I began to focus more on myself, something I hadn't done in a long time. I began taking long walks in the park near my house, finding solace in the quiet of the morning. The familiar path that I had walked with Michael so many times seemed different now, more like a journey I had to take alone. But it wasn't as painful as I thought it would be. In fact, I began to feel an unexpected sense of freedom with each step I took. I didn't need to lean on anyone else for validation or direction. I could forge my own path, one that didn't rely on the expectations of others. One afternoon, I was sitting on my front porch, sipping tea and watching the leaves change color as autumn settled in, when I got a call from Michelle, my attorney. She had been incredibly supportive throughout the entire ordeal with Sarah and Luke, and I had been in touch with her after that dinner to discuss next steps. She was the one who had helped me establish the irrevocable trust that had thrown a wrench into Luke's plan. It felt good to know that I wasn't alone in this fight. She had given me the tools to protect myself. "Evelyn," she said, her voice calm and measured, "I just wanted to check in with you, see how you're holding up after everything that happened." I smiled to myself as I replied, "I'm doing okay, Michelle. Better than I expected, actually. I think I finally get it. What I need to do to take care of myself, to not let anyone take advantage of me anymore." There was a pause on the other end, then a soft chuckle. "That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. You've made a lot of progress, Evelyn. I can tell. But I need to talk to you about something." I sat up straighter, the calmness in my chest shifting into curiosity. "What's going on?" "There's been some movement on the legal side. Sarah's lawyer reached out to me. Apparently, she's planning to challenge the trust. She's not happy about the way things have played out. She feels like she's entitled to more of your estate." I felt the air leave my lungs for a second. The cold reality of the situation hit me again, but I didn't feel as panicked as I had when this all first started. Instead, there was a steady resolve that anchored me. Of course she's not happy, but I'm not changing anything. Michelle was quiet for a moment. "I figured as much, and I want you to know we're fully prepared for whatever comes next. I'm going to handle it, Evelyn. You don't have to do anything more right now. Just keep taking care of yourself." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Thank you, Michelle. I'll keep you updated if anything changes on my end, but I'm not backing down." "Good," she said firmly. "That's the right approach. You're doing exactly what needs to be done. You've earned your peace, Evelyn. No one can take that away from you." As we ended the call, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. Michelle's words were exactly what I needed to hear. I had done the hard part already. I had set the boundaries. I had made it clear that my life, my choices, my finances, those things were mine. No one else could take them from me, not even my daughter. And that thought made me feel stronger, more grounded than ever before. Over the next few weeks, I focused on my personal growth, rediscovering the things I used to love. I started cooking more, trying out new recipes I'd always wanted to experiment with, but had never made the time for. I spent time volunteering at the senior center, helping others who were going through similar experiences of financial abuse and manipulation. Talking to those women, hearing their stories, made me realize just how lucky I was to have caught this before it went any further. It also reminded me of how resilient we all are, how we can rise from the most painful moments in our lives and still stand tall. But even as I moved forward, a small part of me still longed for the daughter I had lost. I missed her laughter, the way she used to share her dreams with me, the bond we once had. I missed being the mother she turned to for advice, for support. And I knew, deep down, that part of me would always miss her. I wasn't sure if we would ever be able to reconcile, but I wasn't going to let that hold me back. I wasn't going to let it define my future. Then one evening, I got a message from Sarah. It was short, just a few lines. "I'm sorry, Mom. I've been thinking a lot. Can we meet? I want to talk about the trust and everything." The message hit me like a wave of uncertainty, but it wasn't fear that rushed in. It was more of a deep, aching curiosity. I didn't know what Sarah wanted now, but I was ready to hear her out. On my terms, of course. I had learned that much. And as I sat there, staring at her message, I realized that I didn't need her approval anymore. I didn't need her love to feel complete. But I also knew that, at some point, we would have to face each other. Whether that meant building a new relationship or simply acknowledging what had happened, I didn't know. But I was ready. I took a deep breath, tapping out a response. "We can meet, but only if you're ready to listen. On my terms. I won't be manipulated anymore." I hit send, then set the phone down on the table. The future was still unknown, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face it. And no matter what happened, I knew one thing for sure. I was going to be okay. The day I received Sarah's message, I had mixed emotions swirling inside me. I had been prepared to move forward with my life, to put the betrayal behind me, and embrace the newfound peace I had fought so hard to achieve. But her message, asking to meet and talk, threw me off balance. I had spent so many years investing everything into our relationship, always hoping that the bond between mother and daughter would be enough to weather any storm. But now, with all that had happened, I had no idea what this meeting would bring. Was she truly remorseful, or was this just another attempt to manipulate me? I spent the entire morning pacing through the house, my mind racing with questions. Should I meet with her? Could I trust her again? I thought about the times we had spent together, the years I had poured into raising her, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. The little girl who used to call me when she had a bad day was gone, replaced by someone who was willing to use me for her own benefit. And yet, I still loved her. That's the thing about being a mother, I suppose. You never stop loving your children, no matter what they do or how much they hurt you. As the afternoon wore on, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. I had already made my decision. If Sarah wanted to talk, if she was ready to listen and understand the damage she had caused, then I would give her that opportunity. But I would set clear boundaries. I would not allow myself to be dragged back into the same emotional trap. I had learned the hard way that love was not enough when it came to protecting myself. I texted her back, setting the terms of our meeting. "We can meet, but only if you're ready to listen, Sarah. I won't be manipulated anymore. I will not discuss the trust, my finances, or the past. If you want to talk about rebuilding our relationship, then we can do that, but only if you're prepared to respect my boundaries." The reply came quickly. "I understand, Mom. I really do. Let's meet tomorrow at noon. I just want a chance to talk." I read her words carefully. She seemed sincere, but after everything that had happened, I couldn't afford to let my guard down completely. I needed to see for myself if she was truly ready to make amends, or if this was just another tactic to get what she wanted. The next day, I arrived at the small cafe where we had agreed to meet, feeling oddly composed. It was a place we used to frequent when Sarah was younger, a quiet spot where we had shared many cups of coffee and conversation. I hadn't been here in years, but as I walked through the door, the familiar scent of brewed coffee and the soft hum of chatter brought back a rush of memories. The table by the window where Sarah and I had sat so many times, talking about her dreams and fears, now felt like a distant part of my past. I didn't know if I was ready to return to that space. I found a seat and ordered my usual, black coffee, no sugar. I had no idea how long I would be waiting, or what I would even say when Sarah arrived. I was still uncertain, unsure of whether this conversation could lead to healing, or if it would just be another chapter of heartache. A few minutes later, Sarah walked in. She looked the same, but different. More mature, more guarded. She was wearing a simple jacket and jeans, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. There was no sign of the designer clothes or the polished appearance she had worn at dinner that night. It felt like a different side of her, one I hadn't seen in a long time. My heart ached, but I couldn't let myself be swept up in nostalgia or hope. Not now. When she spotted me, she hesitated for just a second before making her way over. Her eyes were tired, and there was a vulnerability in them that I hadn't noticed before. She sat down across from me, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. The silence was uncomfortable, filled with the weight of everything that had happened between us. "Mom," Sarah said finally, her voice soft, "I don't know where to start. I've been thinking a lot about everything, about what happened between us and how I treated you. I'm sorry. I know I hurt you, and I know I pushed you away. I don't know what happened to me." I looked at her, studying her face. There was something different in the way she spoke, something that told me she wasn't just saying words because she felt she had to. It felt like she was genuinely trying to understand. But was it enough? Could I trust this apology? Or was it just another attempt to get me to give her what she wanted? "I don't know if an apology is enough, Sarah," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You made choices. Choices that hurt me. And they didn't just hurt me, they hurt our family. You chose to prioritize something that wasn't important at the expense of everything we had. I've spent a lifetime putting you and Lucas first. But now I see that I can't do that anymore. Not at the cost of my own dignity." Her eyes welled up with tears, but she quickly wiped them away, as if embarrassed. "I know, Mom. I know. And I don't know why I did it. I was so caught up in the idea of what my life should look like, of what I thought I needed. But now I see that I was wrong. I was selfish. I took you for granted. I don't expect you to forgive me just like that, but I want you to know I'm sorry. I want to do better. I want to rebuild our relationship." I took a deep breath. It was hard to hear her say those words, knowing how much damage had been done. But in that moment, something in me softened. Maybe there was a chance for us, after all. Maybe this wasn't the end of our relationship, but the beginning of something new. But it couldn't be the same. It couldn't go back to how it was before. "I don't know what that looks like yet, Sarah," I said quietly. "I don't know if I can trust you again, but I'm willing to try, on one condition." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with hope. "What is it?" "You have to respect my boundaries. You have to understand that I'm not the same person I was before all of this, and I need to know that you're not just here to get what you want. I need to know that you're here because you genuinely want to rebuild what we had, not because you feel entitled to anything." She nodded, her expression serious. "I understand. I won't push you anymore, I promise." For the first time in months, I felt the tiniest glimmer of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me believe that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to move forward. The road would be long, and it would take time, but at least now we were both willing to try. And that was enough for me. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking, slowly starting to rebuild the connection we had lost. The conversation wasn't easy, but it was real. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone. Maybe the future would bring more challenges, but for now, I was ready to face them, together. It's strange, really, how life has a way of testing you when you least expect it. The events of the past few weeks, Sarah's apology, the confrontation with Luke, the decision to draw a line and stand my ground, had left me feeling more resilient than I ever thought possible. But as much as I'd come to terms with the new boundaries I had set, there was still a lingering feeling deep inside me that I hadn't fully processed everything. I still wasn't sure where Sarah and I stood, or if she truly understood what she had done and why it had hurt me so much. She said she was sorry. She promised things would be different. But could I trust that? Could I believe in her words enough to let her back into my life without fear of being hurt again? It had been 2 weeks since our conversation at the cafe, and I still hadn't made up my mind about what came next. I wasn't sure if I was ready to fully embrace the idea of reconciliation, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let myself be manipulated again. I had set my terms, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own life, my own decisions. That afternoon, as I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, I found myself thinking about Michael. It had been almost a year since he passed away, and yet the house still felt so empty without him. I missed him more than I could put into words. He had been my rock, the steady force that balanced out my tendency to worry too much. Together, we had made a life that was comfortable, full of love and laughter, and now it felt like all of that was slipping through my fingers. But Michael had always been the one to remind me that family wasn't just about the people you were born to. It was about the connections you built, the relationships you nurtured. He had always believed in second chances, in growth, and in the possibility of change. Maybe it was time for me to take a page from his book, to give Sarah that chance to prove she could change, too. But it had to be on my terms. I had made too many sacrifices over the years to let my love for her cloud my judgment again. If I was going to rebuild this relationship, it needed to be done with clear expectations, with respect, and without any hidden agendas. The phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Sarah. My heart skipped a beat before I answered it, my fingers suddenly a little unsteady. "Hey, Mom," she said, her voice tentative but warm. "I know it's been a while, but I wanted to check in. Are you doing okay?" I sighed, leaning back into the couch as I took a sip of my tea. I hadn't heard from her in days, and the silence had been both a relief and a reminder of how much had been left unsaid. The truth was, I wasn't sure what I wanted from her. I didn't know how to fix this. I wasn't sure there was a way to go back to the way things were. But that didn't mean I was ready to close the door on her either. "I'm doing fine, Sarah. Really. I've been keeping busy, working on some things, spending time with friends, just living my life." She was silent for a moment. "I'm glad to hear that. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Mom, about everything that happened. I know I hurt you, and I don't think I ever really understood how much until now. But I'm ready to work on it. I need you to know that I'm serious about this. About us." I leaned forward, the words hitting me harder than I expected. She sounded so different now, so sincere. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that the daughter I had raised, the one who used to laugh with me and share her dreams, hadn't been lost forever to greed and entitlement. But the sting of betrayal was still fresh. How could I just forgive and forget? How could I put myself back in a position where I was vulnerable to being hurt again? "You're right, Sarah. You did hurt me," I said quietly, trying to keep the emotion out of my voice. "You and Luke both did, but I've had to come to terms with that. And I can't just jump back into things like nothing happened. I need to see action, not just words." She sighed softly. "I understand. I'm not asking for everything to go back to the way it was. I know it's going to take time, and I'm willing to be patient. But I want to try, Mom. I really do." I closed my eyes for a moment, processing her words. It was hard to admit it, but part of me wanted to try too. Maybe this was the start of something new. Maybe I could find a way to forgive her, not for her sake, but for mine, to free myself from the pain of the past and give us both a chance to rebuild something real. "I'm not sure what that looks like yet," I said finally, my voice steady. "But I'm willing to meet you halfway, Sarah. I need to see that you're serious about making things right. No more manipulation, no more demands, just respect." She was quiet for a long moment before responding. "I promise, Mom, I will respect you. I will prove it to you, one step at a time." I believed her, or at least I wanted to, and that was enough for me, at least for now. The path ahead wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be quick, but maybe we could find a way forward, together. "I'm going to hold you to that," I said with a small smile, my heart lighter than it had been in weeks. "But I'm willing to give this a chance. I'll meet you halfway." She let out a breath, and I could hear the relief in her voice. "Thank you, Mom. That means the world to me." As we ended the call, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. It wasn't resolution. It wasn't the end of the story, but it was the beginning of something new, something fragile and uncertain, but full of potential. I didn't know where it would lead, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid to see what came next. I stood up, looking out the window at the setting sun, the colors in the sky reminding me that even after the darkest of storms, the sun always rises again. I didn't know if Sarah and I would ever get back to the place we had once been, but I was ready to find out. Because at the end of the day, family, true family, wasn't about what was taken or given. It was about being willing to take the first step, even when the road ahead was uncertain. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to take that step. The weeks that followed felt like an intricate dance between hope and caution, like walking a tightrope between what I wanted to believe and what I knew could still hurt me. The conversations with Sarah had been far more honest than I had expected, and she seemed to genuinely want to rebuild our relationship. But trust, as I had learned the hard way, wasn't something that could be handed over on a silver platter. Trust had to be earned, and I wasn't willing to ignore the scars left behind by her actions. We met several more times after our cafe conversation. Each meeting was a delicate balancing act. We would sit across from each other, sometimes in silence, sometimes exchanging small talk about her pregnancy, the weather, things that didn't feel so heavy. It was strange, this new version of our relationship, almost as if we were strangers trying to find common ground again. I didn't know where this was going, but I knew I wasn't going to let Sarah's mistakes define me or her. There had to be something salvageable beneath the hurt, beneath the entitlement and manipulation. But I wasn't going to rush into it. This was going to take time. One afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table, the soft light of late afternoon streaming through the windows. It had been a week since Sarah and I last spoke, and the quiet in the house felt more pronounced than usual. I found myself thinking a lot about Michael. He would have known what to say, how to handle all of this. But he wasn't here, and I was left to navigate this alone, and in many ways, that was exactly how it needed to be. This was about me. It was about me choosing to stand up for myself, about me deciding that I deserved more than being just a fallback option when things didn't go as planned. I hadn't heard from Sarah in several days, but I knew that she was processing things too. She had been reaching out more, sending messages, and I could sense the shift in her approach. No more demands, no more ultimatums. It felt different now, more like a quiet apology, an understanding that I was the one who needed to set the pace, not her. And that was exactly what I had asked for from the very beginning: respect. As I sat with my cup of coffee, I thought about the boundaries I had established, the ones that had, for so long, been violated without my realizing it. The ability to set boundaries was a gift, but also a challenge. There were moments when the guilt crept in, those moments when I wanted to give in, to forget about the damage, to move past it for the sake of peace. But I had learned that peace wasn't something you could simply give away. Peace had to be protected. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced at the caller ID and saw Sarah's name. My chest tightened instinctively, but I picked up the phone. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice soft and hesitant. "I know it's been a few days, and I just wanted to check in. I've been thinking a lot. I miss you, and I want to keep working on this. But I also want to be honest with you about where I'm at. I know it's going to take time, and I'm okay with that. I wanted to ask if we could meet again soon, talk again. I think we're on the right path." I paused, letting her words sink in. I had been waiting for this moment, hoping for it, but it didn't make it easier. How could it? How could I simply forget everything that had happened between us? How could I trust that this time, things would be different? But I also knew this. If I didn't give her the chance to make it right, then I was the one holding on to the past. I wasn't going to heal if I kept carrying it around with me. "I think we can meet, Sarah," I said, my voice steady, though it felt like a small crack in the wall I had built around myself. "But just so you know, this isn't going to be like before. I've told you what I need, and I meant it. I'm not going to let myself be hurt again." "I understand, Mom," she said quickly. "I won't push you. I promise. I just need the chance to show you that I can do better, that I can be a better daughter, and that I can be a better person." Her words felt genuine. There was no pretension, no manipulation in her tone. It felt like she truly understood what I needed from her. And for the first time, I believed her. For the first time, I felt a spark of the daughter I had raised, the one who had once relied on me, the one who had looked to me for guidance, not for money or favors, but for love. We set a date to meet the following weekend. As the days passed, I found myself dreading the meeting, but also looking forward to it. I had no idea what would come of it. I didn't know if it would be the beginning of something beautiful or just another false hope that would eventually fade away. But I also knew this. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't afraid to stand up for myself, to set my terms, and to demand that my voice be heard. The day of our meeting came, and I found myself sitting in the same cafe we had visited months ago, just the two of us, Sarah and me. I watched the door swing open, and my heart skipped a beat when I saw her. She was dressed simply, her hair falling around her shoulders, but there was a softness in her face, something more vulnerable than I had seen in a long time. She walked over and sat down, her eyes searching mine. There was no pretense now, no defensiveness, just a quiet plea for understanding. "I'm glad we're here," she said softly. "I know I hurt you. I know I've taken so much from you, and I can't change the past. But I can promise you that I want to make it right, Mom. I want to work for your trust. I want to show you that I'm not the person I was before." I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. "I'm listening, Sarah," I said, "and I want to see the change, not just hear about it. But we can't keep going in circles. This is the time. This is where we decide what happens next." For the first time, I felt like we were on the same page, like we were both finally ready to acknowledge what had happened, to recognize the pain, and to move forward. Not quickly, not without difficulty, but with a shared understanding that healing takes time. And as we sat there together, I realized that this was the beginning, not just of a new chapter for our relationship, but of something far more important, of me choosing to let go of the past and choose the hope for the future instead. Life can be unpredictable, and the relationships we hold dearest can sometimes become the ones that challenge us the most. It's essential to set boundaries and protect your peace, even when it feels like love should be enough to fix everything. Trust is earned, not given freely, and it's okay to take a step back when you feel it's being manipulated or taken for granted. Always prioritize your self-respect and remember that true love isn't about meeting others' expectations, but finding mutual understanding and respect. When faced with difficult choices, trust your inner voice and be firm in your decisions, even if it means facing temporary discomfort. Healing doesn't happen overnight, but by taking small steps and being honest with yourself, you can rebuild relationships on your terms. Never underestimate the power of setting boundaries. It may be uncomfortable, but it's essential for maintaining your mental and emotional health. Surround yourself with people who respect you for who you are and recognize that sometimes letting go of what hurts is the only way to create room for what truly nurtures your soul. Life is about growth, not perfection. Choose peace, even when it's hard.